If you were born anywhere between the late 90s up to the end of the first decade of the new millennia, then if you love RPG games, there's a big chance that you've come across the game series Gothic. If you haven't, and in any case, it is time that you are properly introduced to one of the best open-world RPG games ever made.
Some games are just forgotten, even though they're awesome, and so let's bring them back to the spotlight.
2001. The German company Piranha Bytes drops its first ever fantasy RPG open-world game. So, what can you really expect? Well, pretty much everything. Firstly, let me explain to you the impeccable setting of the world and its amazing story. The game takes place in a medieval fantasy world where the humans are losing the world against the orcs. And so, in order to continue the war, the king requires magical ore, which he uses to create powerful armors and weapons. The ore is located in the penal colony, where every burglar, thief or murderer is forced to work there in the ore mines, by the king's orders. And so in order to keep the prisoners inside the colony, the king ordered 12 magicians to form a magical barrier over the colony, so that all the sentenced cannot escape. But then it happened. The spell went wrong, and the barrier trapped a much larger territory than originally intended, along with the 12 magicians and the king's forces. And so the militia blocked inside soon lost control over the prisoners, and the king had no choice but to trade with the convicts. Soon after, the convicts inside the colony divided into several camps, which the hero can choose from and join in order to survive and advance the plot. The hero of the story is a nameless man, who is also sentenced to work into the mines of the colony because of his crimes. That is where the story takes off. You start as a nameless hero, and your task is to explore the world and the colony inside the barrier and choose who to join and pretty much what to do with the time that is given to you. Moving on to the world. Like I mentioned earlier, when the convicts took control of the colony, it only took them a while to separate and form different camps. The main camps of the game are 3, and you can choose which one you want to join. Firstly, you have the old camp, which is probably the first one formed, and there live the ore barons, who control the trading with the king outside the colony. And then you have the new camp, which is inhabited by people of a more rebellious nature. And they refuse to trade the ore that they mine, and instead, they plan to use the ore's magic abilities to explode the magic barrier. Problem is, they don't know if this will work, and I guess you can join them and see for yourself. And the last camp is called the Swamp Camp, or the Sect Camp, where the people that live there are called the Brotherhood. Basically, they are a bunch of stoners who believe in a god called the Sleeper that will help them escape the colony. So the people of the Sect Camp mostly spend their time smoking weed and being high, and harvesting more weed so that they can smoke and stay high 24/7. But, make no mistake, the people of the Brotherhood do become some nasty warriors called the Templars, and so if you do choose to join them, you get to be a very badass person. So that's with the main camps and the 3 choices you have. Apart from that, there is also the old mine, which is under the control of the old camp, and the free mine, which is controlled by the new camp. And the Brotherhood of the Sect Camp is the only camp not in control of any of the mines, because they simply don't have time for anything else other than being high all the time. But of course, this is not all the world has to give to you. In between the camps, there is a ton of places to explore in a vast area of mountains, caves and forests, where you can find hidden items, hermits, and or other people that live in the wilderness, and of course, many dangerous animals and monsters. Besides the main map, there are also extra locations where you're tasked to go for various quests, places like the Orkland, Mysterious Letters, and the Sleeper's Temple. Moving on to the gameplay. If you have played the game, then you know that the controls seem to be very jarring at first, and it may take you up to 10 minutes to figure out how to pick up items or how to engage in combat. But after diving into it, you realize that the controls make sense, and in fact, the melee combat is fantastic. Moreover, if you can distinguish the different combos that different enemies use, then you can really use your attacks precisely, and you can take out much stronger opponents if you are patient enough to wait until you have decreased their life bar fully. But the combat itself can get altogether much more fun and easier, as you can use the experience points that you get when you level up in order to upgrade your fighting style, and thus making your hero faster and more efficient. you can upgrade a huge range of skills, from one-handed and two-handed combat to bow and crossbow skills, sneaking, pickpocketing, lockpicking, and of course circles of magic that will allow you to use various powerful runes. I promise you fellas, the gameplay is so much more impressive and satisfying than the first impression it gives you when you first play it. And of course, I could not go out without mentioning the atmosphere and graphics of the game. Shut up! You! Yes you! I know what some people are going to say. Oh, but you can't play a game that is not 1000 frames per second and does not have 4K Ultra HD graphics. Shut up! Some people like me do not judge a game by its graphics, but by the quality of the gameplay in the game overall. Just how you don't judge a book by its cover. Many gamers of today's world do not have what it takes to explore older games because they run on 30 frames per second and the resolution is lower. And I ask, so what?
Like, who cares?
Anyway, back to the matter of the discussion. In Gothic, the atmosphere is magic and surreal, and the way the music changes depending on the exact location and time of day you are is simply astonishing. Take a look.
Wouldn't like to be in his shoes, though.
That wasn't very clever.
I mean, the aesthetic is really interesting and the world very worthwhile to explore. Not only that, but the voice acting is also amazing and it gives you the feeling that every character is totally engaged with the story.
Only me alone!
When you play Gothic, you can tell that each piece and corner of the world is handcrafted, compared for example to the Elder Scrolls franchise, where the world is much more bigger, but in reality, it's simply hundreds of hours of identical copy-pasted dungeons, and to be honest, I never understood that appeal. To put things into perspective, every unit of the Gothic world is unique, and that is what makes the game so satisfying and unique, compared to other popular RPG open-world games, where you just get more and more of identical things, just for the sake of having a huge world. Now this is just my opinion fellas, what do you think on this matter? Last, the sequels. Now I spoke mostly about the first game, but it actually had plenty of sequels. Gothic 2 takes place right after the events of Gothic 1, where, spoiler alert, the magic barrier surrounding the colony has been destroyed and now the nameless hero gets to explore the outer world. However, you do have plenty of main quests that bring you back to the map of the colony, and the world there is kinda the same, only it now has different people and different monsters. With that said, it is obvious that the world of Gothic 2 is way bigger than that of the first game, and also the game itself is much more difficult and you have to be very careful on how you play it. Besides that, the gameplay and controls are almost identical to the first game, and you also get to interact with many characters of the first game. Also, there is a gold edition of Gothic 2, where you get a big expansion and a new add-on map, where you get many more amazing quests and an amazing storyline. It's kinda like the Blood and Wine DLC from The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. And now, after Gothic 2, there came a number of sequels, but unfortunately, I don't think they are worthy of their predecessors. Gothic 3 is probably the only interesting sequel, where you explore even more of the Gothic world, and to be honest, the shaping of the world and the size and variety of quests and choices that you can make throughout the game is amazing. The only possible downside for me is that the game features new controls and a different style of gameplay, and this may sometimes make it feel like you're playing something else, and not Gothic. To be precise, Gothic 3 is an amazing game, and I loved playing it. You just don't get the feeling and the atmosphere of the previous two games because of the new game style. However, there is a community patch that you can download in order to make Gothic 3 feel a bit more like the two previous games. And now everything else released after Gothic 3 is simply just not worth mentioning in my opinion. One exciting thing about the Gothic series right now is that the first game is getting a new remake remastered version. The only wish I have for it is to keep the same controls and just simply develop the overall quality and resolution of the game. We'll have to wait and see. And so overall fellas, I think Gothic is a game that you either love or hate. If you have played the game and really got into it, then you can't help but love the game, and simply turn a blind eye to any issues the game might have. On the other side, if you never really got into the game and you judge it solely based on how it looks, or only after playing it just briefly, then you're probably gonna hate it. What is your opinion on Gothic, fellas? Were you ever lucky enough to play it in those early days? Or maybe, do you plan on giving it a try now after watching this video? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Before you go, make sure to smash like and subscribe, because why not? Until the next one, have an amazing time and I'll see you all later.